This is an edited version of the video on JFK Jr. that went up before Trump announced J.D. Vance as his VP. The video was a real problem for days. The softwares were crashing, my words were being changed, and after upload, I learned that almost all of the reference documents had been stripped from the video and replaced. So I'm editing and trying to get those documents out again. So here we go. The censorship is tough on this one, and I'm not sure why. John F. Kennedy Jr. was a prince of American royalty. The son of a beloved president, John, as he was affectionately known, captivated the nation with his charm and charisma. He was a Kennedy, after all. The Kennedy name carries weight, it carries legacy, but it also carries a history of tragedy. When John allegedly died in a plane crash in 1999, the world mourned the loss of a life brimming with potential. But what if that potential wasn't extinguished? What if John's story didn't end in the waters off Martha's Vineyard? This video may be one of those ones that come down quickly, so share it while we are still allowed. It will also be published on my Rumble channel. We are going to review unclassified documents surrounding the crash of John's airplane in this video. A compelling conspiracy theory suggests that JFK Jr. might be alive, and we're going to see if the official report supports this notion. You might be surprised at my findings. Many believe that there have been comms that John F. Kennedy Jr., also known as John, is alive and has already been chosen as Donald Trump's vice president running mate, but the announcement of J.D. Vance threw a wrench in that one. Or did it? It's not over yet, and nothing will surprise me in this movie that we are watching. What do you think? Could JFK Jr. really stage his own death? And why? Is there a chance that he could emerge from the shadows in the near future to fight the cabal that allegedly killed his dad? This is what we're here to explore. We're diving deep into the life and supposed death of John F. Kennedy Jr. to examine the events surrounding that fateful flight and whether it is feasible that he survived it or perhaps staged it. We'll separate fact from fiction in a story that continues to fascinate and bewilder people worldwide. Get ready to question everything you thought you knew. Before we continue though, just let me ask you to share my videos with as many people as you know. YouTube will not allow me to promote this video, so it's up to you to get it out there. I have also been in the shadows for many years, but am finally able to build a depository of information that people should know about our world and our government. Tell your friends about the ex-pharmacist who has finally come out of the shadows to expose the corruption and lies. Buckle up as we journey into the heart of a mystery that refuses to die. John F. Kennedy Jr. was born into the spotlight. As the son of President John F. Kennedy and Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, his life was a matter of public record from the moment he was born. Cameras followed his every move. The nation watched him grow from a precocious child into a handsome young man. His early years were marked by both privilege and tragedy. He lived a charmed life surrounded by wealth and influence, but he also experienced profound loss at a young age when his father was assassinated. The image of young John saluting his father's casket is seared into the nation's memory. Despite the burdens of his family's legacy, John managed to carve his own path. He pursued higher education, earning degrees from Brown University and New York University School of Law. He dabbled in acting, worked as a lawyer, and even founded his own political magazine, George. John was more than just a Kennedy heir. He possessed a unique magnetism. He was charismatic, intelligent, and undeniably handsome. People were drawn to him. They saw in him a reflection of his father's charm and his mother's grace. He was a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the face of immense tragedy, life goes on. He represented the promise of a new generation. He carried the Kennedy torch with both dignity and a touch of rebellion. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Born on November 25, 1960, in Washington, D.C., just 2 weeks after his father, John F. Kennedy, won the presidential election, John Jr. was destined for a life unlike any other. He was a child of destiny, born into a world of power, privilege, and unparalleled public scrutiny. Little did anyone know that this tiny infant, swaddled in the finest linens and cradled in the arms of the most glamorous First Lady the world had ever seen, would one day become the subject of intense speculation and intrigue. His father was assassinated under very controversial circumstances just 3 days before his 3rd birthday. For those into numerology, you will know that the number 3 is associated with the divine and positive energy. Growing up in a prominent political family, John F. Kennedy Jr. was surrounded by politics from a young age. He maintained an interest in public service and had political aspirations most of his life. There was much speculation that he might run for political office, including a potential bid for the U.S. Senate seat from New York. However, he never formally announced a candidacy. John F. Kennedy Jr. married Carolyn Bessette on September 21, 1996. They lived a private life, but friends say that the marriage was in trouble because Carolyn did not want to live under the constant scrutiny of the media. In fact, there were reports that they were living in separate residences at the time. On July 16, 1999, John F. Kennedy Jr., Carolyn and her sister Lauren Bessette died in a plane crash off the coast of Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts. John F. Kennedy Jr. The name alone carried a certain gravitas, a sense of destiny intertwined with American politics. It was almost expected that he would, at some point, follow in his father's footsteps and seek public office. The question wasn't if, but when. Throughout the late 80s and into the 90s, there were persistent rumors and media speculation about Kennedy Jr. considering a run for political office. Would he run for Congress? The Senate, perhaps? The media, ever hungry for a Kennedy comeback story, fueled the flames of anticipation. These rumors intensified after he founded George magazine in 1995, which focused on politics and culture. One of the most prominent speculations was that Kennedy Jr. would run for the U.S. Senate seat from New York. This seat was held by Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan, a respected figure in New York politics. Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan was succeeded by Hillary Clinton. Quite a coincidence. What are your thoughts on that? Did John become another statistic of the people who were a threat to the Clinton empire? Or did he protect himself by moving into seclusion to later emerge as part of an operation to free the world from the evil forces responsible for his father's death? Amidst the political whispers and media scrutiny, John Jr. found solace in his personal life. His relationship with Carolyn Bessette was the stuff of fairy tales, a whirlwind romance that captivated the world. Carolyn was the antithesis of the typical political wife. She was stylish, fiercely independent, and intensely private. She shied away from the spotlight, preferring the quiet intimacy of their Tribeca loft to the glare of public events. Their love story was a study in contrasts. He, the charismatic prince of American royalty; she, the elegant commoner who captured his heart. Their wedding, a secret affair held on a remote island off the coast of Georgia, was a testament to their desire for privacy in a world obsessed with their every move. Carolyn brought a sense of normalcy to John Jr.'s life, a grounding force amidst the chaos of his public persona. They were often spotted walking hand in hand through the streets of New York, enjoying the simple pleasures of anonymity their fame seldom allowed. The years leading up to the fateful summer of 1999 were a time of relative peace and stability for John Jr. He was happily married, his career was thriving, and he seemed to have found a sense of balance between his public and private life. George magazine was gaining traction, providing John Jr. with a platform to express his political views and engage in meaningful dialogue. He used the magazine to tackle tough issues, to challenge the status quo, and to honor his family's legacy of public service. He was also deeply involved in philanthropic endeavors, supporting causes close to his heart. He worked tirelessly to promote literacy, empower young people, and advocate for the disabled. To the outside world, John Jr. seemed to have it all. He was handsome, successful, and deeply loved. He was living a life that many could only dream of. But beneath the surface, there were whispers of discontent, hints of shadows lurking in the wings. As the flight progressed, however, a series of unsettling anomalies began to emerge. Accounts of the weather vary from clear to a thick fog in the dark night. Reports say that visibility was limited. John had been flying for just 1 year, where he plunged into piloting a plane and skydiving. In the months before the accident, John took the route to Martha's Vineyard nearly every weekend. Just like his father's death, John's death remains a mystery with an extensive investigation that has numerous holes in it. Why didn't John Jr. activate the plane's emergency locator transmitter, or ELT? Why didn't he divert to a nearby airport when the weather deteriorated? And why, despite the official explanation of pilot error, do some aviation experts still find inconsistencies in the NTSB report? Some believe that John Jr., disillusioned with politics or facing threats from unknown forces, chose to stage his own death, disappearing into anonymity to escape the burdens of his family name. Still others suggest that he's still out there, waiting for the right moment to re-emerge, perhaps even to reclaim his family's place on the political stage as part of a Level Q clearance operation. Still another theory is that an evil cabal sabotaged his trip, resulting in the crash of his plane and the deaths of his family, because his political cooperation couldn't be bought. Whether these theories hold any water is a matter of debate. But one thing is certain: the mystery surrounding two of the most well-respected men from the very influential Kennedy royalty both died young under very suspicious circumstances. George magazine figures prominently in this mission of discovery to find out what truly happened to John Jr. In 1995, John F. Kennedy Jr. launched George, a glossy political magazine aimed at engaging a younger generation, often disillusioned by the dry world of politics. It was a bold move, a departure from the traditional political strategies of a Kennedy, but John was always a fearless. George was a magazine that dared to be different, to challenge the status quo, and to make politics accessible. John Jr. understood the power of imagery, the importance of making a splash and grabbing attention. Does this sound like anyone else that you might know? In the September 1998 issue of George magazine, John Jr. published an interview with Oliver Stone, director of the movie JFK, which explored various conspiracy theories surrounding his father's assassination. The last issue of George was March 2001 after 57 issues during its initial run. After missing for 21 years, George magazine mysteriously resurfaced in October 2022 and has published 20 issues since then. The About Us page references John F. Kennedy as editor-in-chief, but does not say anything about the current team creating George magazine. The address listed turned out to be a UPS store in Arkansas. While no corporate records were found, I did find a comment that Gene Ho was doing a great job with the magazine. I searched Gene Ho and found his Facebook page, which states that he is also editor-in-chief of George magazine. Strange. Gene Ho is a public figure known primarily as a former official photographer for Donald Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. There are photos of Gene with Donald Trump, Robert Kennedy, and Pastor Bob Joyce. Ho posted that Eric Trump will be a speaker along with himself, General Flynn, Mike Lindell, and others on the Reawaken America tour. John F. Kennedy Jr. had a lifelong interest in aviation, which he shared with his family, including his father, President John F. Kennedy. Kennedy Jr. obtained his pilot's license in 1998, which allowed him to fly private aircraft. He often flew between his home in New York City and other destinations. A statement from his mechanic indicated that the Piper Saratoga, with call numbers N9253N, was pre-purchased on April 16, 1999, shortly after he sold his Cessna 182. 3 months later, on July 16, 1999, Kennedy Jr. allegedly departed from Essex County Airport in Fairfield, New Jersey, with his wife, Carolyn Bessette Kennedy, and her sister, Lauren Bessette, en route to Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts. John had made 35 trips like this on various airplanes within 15 months of the accident, and he had done the same route 4 times before, 3 of which were night flights. The fatal flight was on Kennedy Jr. Nunna's single-engine Piper Saratoga aircraft. The plane had a few repairs and was picked up by the mechanic the day before the crash. At 9:41 p.m. Eastern Time, John and his passengers took off from Essex County Airport in Caldwell, New Jersey, without a flight plan. The group's plan was to drop off Lauren in Martha's Vineyard, and John and Carolyn would continue to Hyannis, Massachusetts. Witnesses at the Caldwell Airport reported seeing the pilot, assumed as John on crutches with one female near the airplane. The last communication between John and the air traffic control was at 8:38 p.m. The plane crashed into the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Martha's Vineyard approximately 10 p.m. There were no distress calls or SOS recordings from the aircraft before the crash. Only between 1 to 2% of crashes occur with no prior distress call attempt. Most aviation incidents involve some form of communication from the pilot or crew indicating an emergency situation or distress, so there was about a 99% chance that he could have made a distress call. The flight took place at night, and weather conditions were reported to be hazy with reduced visibility, but within recommendations at the low altitude that he was flying. During heavy fog, radar systems may encounter challenges in detecting aircraft, especially those flying at low altitudes. Fog can significantly scatter radar signals, reducing the radar's ability to detect and accurately track aircraft. The plane went down 7.5 miles from the runway, and radar data from several sources report a rapid descent to about 11 or 1,200 feet, and the signal disappeared. There was no black box or flight data recorder recovered from the alleged location of the crash, which is not unusual for small private aircraft like the Piper Saratoga, which typically are not required to have such recorders installed, unlike larger commercial aircraft. Allegedly, all three occupants, John F. Kennedy Jr., Carolyn Bessette Kennedy, and Lauren Bessette, perished in the accident. After the crash, even though it was equipped, the emergency locator transmitter, ELT, did not work, and search and rescue teams relied on other methods, including radar data, communication logs, and extensive search efforts by the U.S. Coast Guard and Navy to locate the wreckage of the aircraft. The National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, investigated the crash and were unable to determine the exact cause of failure, but concluded that the probable cause was the pilot's failure to maintain control of the airplane during a descent over water at night. Random Ventures Inc. was a company associated with John F. Kennedy Jr. It was registered as the owner of his Piper Saratoga aircraft. After the crash, the remains of the plane were released to Random Ventures Inc., indicating that it was the entity through which Kennedy managed his aviation assets. After John Jr.'s death, George magazine struggled to find its footing. The charismatic force behind its creation was gone, and the magazine, despite its loyal following, ceased publication in 2001. It seemed that George, so intertwined with John Jr.'s own vision and energy, had come to an end. But, in a surprising turn of events, George magazine was resurrected in 2022. The news of its revival was met with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Could the magazine, once a reflection of John Jr.'s unique perspective, recapture its former glory without John Jr. at the helm? The revived George maintains a focus on politics and culture. Its tone and content reflect the current political climate. The man behind the revival is Gene Ho, a former photographer for Donald Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. Ho's involvement has raised eyebrows, fueling speculation about the magazine's political leanings and its potential connections to the former president. Did Trump have anything to do with reviving George? Time will tell, but it's clear that the Clintons had a lot to do with burying the young Kennedy. It should come as no surprise that the handling of John Kennedy Jr.'s death was not handled in the usual manner. President Bill Clinton and his wife Hillary took a particular interest in the very private funeral arrangements for Kennedy and his family. Senator Edward Kennedy also appeared to be instrumental in coordinating the aftermath of the crash. On July 19, 1999, Edward Kennedy issued a written statement about the unspeakable grief by John, Carolyn, and Lauren's loss. There's only one problem with this letter. The wreckage wasn't found until 11:30 p.m. the next day, and the bodies were not recovered until late July 21st. The burial at sea occurred the next morning. The 3 autopsies were allegedly done immediately by the Barnstable County Medical Examiner's Office on Cape Cod, but can be found nowhere. Each autopsy would take 2 to 4 hours per person, so at least 6 hours. They were then cremated at the Fairfield Funeral Home in Manhattan, New York City, which is 215 miles south of Cape Cod. Cremation usually takes 1 to 3 hours and about 4 hours for cooling. Then it would be another 155 miles to the burial location off the coast of Martha's Vineyard at 9 a.m. the next morning. The recovery of the bodies and subsequent procedures, including autopsies and arrangements for burial, typically take more time than just overnight. The details of the official timeline is highly improbable. So they expect us to believe that the wreckage was discovered at 11:30 p.m., were pulled up, autopsies and cremation occurred, and their ashes were thrown into the ocean 9 a.m. the following morning. To further muddy the water, while Kennedy and the 2 women were allegedly buried at sea in 9.5 hours, the Navy had a backlog of 52 remains waiting in storage to be buried at sea. What do you think? I don't think it's much of a leap to say that John Jr., his wife, and her sister were not buried at sea that morning. The obvious question is whether they were ever recovered from the plane wreck. But the question remains, did the plane really go down? In spite of the fact that photographs of the wreckage call numbers have not been released, there were internal notes that Carolyn and Lauren's luggage washed up at different locations. This suggests that a plane went down, but were the Kennedys and Lauren inside the plane when it went down? First, let me say that witnesses only saw JFK Jr. and one woman at the plane, so it's possible that Lauren's luggage was on the plane, but she wasn't. Is it possible that all of their luggage was on the plane and they weren't? Since they were so close to John's Martha Vineyard home, it is possible that they parachuted out of the plane, let it crash over the water, and met someone, or had the next phase of their exit plan waiting somewhere on the island. But wait, before you decide, I have one more tiny morsel for you. It lies within the official photos of the wreckage. I want you to look closely at these photos in the original accident investigation. On the left is a photo of the cockpit taken within 3 months of John's plane. On the right is the photos taken of the cockpit wreckage. I have studied and magnified this photo for hours, and there is an extra gauge on the wreckage plane that was not on John's panel. When I was a government investigator, one of the first things I would do is photograph anything that identified what I was looking at. In this case, it would have been the plane call numbers. To go a little further, out of the 28 photos of the wreckage, there wasn't one photo that contained the full call number on the wreckage. In fact, not even one number or letter in the Kennedy plane call number can be found on any of the wreckage. And lastly, there is a photo of the interior of the plane within 3 months of the crash. But when you look at the photo of the cockpit wreckage, it is the same photo as the one before the wreckage with no damage at all. There is absolutely not one piece of wreckage that I could compare to seating area of the plane. Quite odd, I'd say. At first glance, John F. Kennedy Jr. and Donald Trump might seem like an odd pairing. One, a scion of a liberal dynasty, steeped in the ideals of public service and social justice. The other, a brash businessman with a populist touch, known for his outspoken style and unconventional approach to politics, who has vacillated between registration as a Democrat and Republican. It appears that the values rather than the party motivates Trump. So, could there have been a genuine connection between these two men from seemingly different worlds? Some proponents of the theory that John Jr. is alive point to subtle hints of a relationship between the two men, often gleaned from the pages of the revived George magazine. They highlight instances where the magazine seems to endorse Trump's policies or cast him in a favorable light, suggesting a hidden hand guiding the editorial direction. The fact remains that John F. Kennedy Jr. and Donald Trump knew each other. They were part of the same social and business circles in New York City during the 1990s. Kennedy even interviewed Trump for an article in George. While they were acquaintances and had professional interactions, the depth and nature of their personal relationship are less well documented. If John F. Kennedy Jr. is indeed alive and orchestrating a political comeback, the question arises, why? What could possibly motivate a man who seemingly had it all to walk away from his life and disappear into the shadows? Some speculate that John Jr., disillusioned by the corruption and greed he witnessed within the political elite, decided to take a radical approach to enacting change. They believe he faked his death to escape the confines of his family name and operate outside the system, using his influence and resources to manipulate events from the shadows. Others posit that Carolyn and John Jr. were very much in love, but the media scrutiny was destroying their love to the point that they were living separately. So why would Carolyn even go on this fateful trip? Did John choose to save his marriage by escaping the curse of the Kennedy family and work behind the scenes to later emerge as the Prince of Camelot, standing beside his friend Donald Trump at some point in the future? Many envision a partnership forged in secrecy, with John Jr. acting as a strategic advisor, Trump acting as the frontman, and an army of patriots acting behind the scenes to make the world safe from the corrupt cabal that assassinated John's father. Still others believe that John Jr.'s motivations are driven by a desire to avenge his father's assassination, to expose the truth behind the events of November 22, 1963, and to bring those responsible to justice. They see Trump's presidency as a means to an end, a way to dismantle the deep state and expose the hidden forces they believe were behind his father's death. Whatever the motive, I have not been able to rule out the possibility that John, his wife, and her sister staged their disappearance to escape the trappings of political celebrity. The facts show that John took off on a secret flight with at least one woman where no flight plan or radio communication occurred. The destination airport was not expecting them, and they did not arrive. The possibility of John F. Kennedy Jr. being alive and poised to become Donald Trump's running mate is an intriguing question. The evidence presented does present a plausible scenario that could support the fact that John and his beautiful wife escaped the notoriety and political corruption that dates back before Back 60s. The unorthodox way that their deaths were handled by the Clinton administration created a nearly impossible timeline of events where 3 bodies were retrieved from the ocean, flown to a hospital for autopsies, then flown to Manhattan for cremation, and back to Martha's Vineyard for a highly unusual civilian burial at sea on a warship, all within a 9.5-hour period. Also, why was his baby, George Magazine, revived in 2022 after being shut down for 21 years? Am I the only one that finds this timing peculiar? Lastly, on July 2, 2024, Donald Trump filed a statement of candidacy naming General Michael Flynn as his vice president. None of the media reported it, and there is word that Flynn said it was fake. So how does someone hack a government website with a false filing, and why wasn't it taken down? Then, days later, Trump announces a guy that hated him, J.D. Vance, as his vice president pick. This is crazy. Is Flynn the real pick and Vance is placeholder? Or is Vance going to be swapped out in the end with a miraculous reappearance of the Prince of Camelot to help Trump save this country and essentially the world? Trump does have a flair for the drama, and so did John. Tell me what you think, guys. There are many other scenarios that I didn't address, such as the call numbers on Kennedy's plane have been used since his death, but I found no evidence of that. Also, there is obvious concern that the cabal took the plane out, but this appears to be unfounded from the archive communications. In fact, if anything, it appears that the Clinton administration was dumbstruck by the plane going down. They didn't disable the cockpit recorder, and at the request of Senator Edward Kennedy, a speedy disposition of the bodies scenario was created and supported by the administration to quickly put the matter to rest. Do you think that Hillary is anticipating the ghost of John Kennedy Jr. to appear? I actually do after researching for this video. I stuck to the evidence contained in the unclassified documents regarding the investigation into his life, along with widespread media reports of the time. Please don't take my word for it. I've linked the record archives in the description of this video, and I encourage you to research, validate, and call me out if you find my analysis or my reporting faulty. Personally, I think that the surprises awaiting us in this alternate universe of corruption are about to explode. Many have said that there will be no 2024 election. Could they be thinking that the resurrection of John F. Kennedy Jr. as Trump's running mate will be game over? It has been said by Trump and others that everything will be revealed, and if that's true, this roller coaster ride that we have been on is about to end. I didn't know how this would turn out, guys, but I have to say that I am more excited than ever that all of us conspiracy theorists will soon be vindicated.